Today on an all-new Dr. Phil, a daughter robbed of her innocence.
When I was 11, my dad had custody of me. He manipulated me into sex and the wifely duties. It's shocking that I went through that. People started saying, well, maybe she consented.
You were a victim of emotional extortion, and you were being raped.
Where was her mother?
I was trying to keep in touch with the kids, but I finally just threw my hands up in the air and said, I'll see them when they're 18.
Did you fight for your children?
I did.
No, you didn't.
I'm done.
No, you're not done. Your daughter is here. Don't you throw your hands up and walk out on her again. Answer the question.
I'm not going to answer the question.
She deserves an answer. This isn't about you, it's about her. Let's do it.
Have a good show, everybody. Here we go.
This is a safe place to talk about hard things.
Stand by. We'll count you down.
Today is going to be a changing day in your life.
5, 4.
I am not giving up on you. When Kelly was a little girl, she says her father, David, was a devoted family man who always made time for her, reading her books, playing with her, and above all, protecting her from the world outside. But when Kelly turned 11 years old, she said her world came crashing down because her father, the man she trusted, began grooming her to be his wife. Kelly says David began treating her as a spouse in every sense of the word. She was forced to iron his clothes, maintain the house, have his dinner ready when he came home. And then when she turned 12, he began doing the unthinkable. He forced Kelly into a sexual relationship that would last over a decade. Kelly says for 12 years she was her father's sex slave wife. Take a look.
My family was the typical family that was out there.
I like to think we were a happy-go-lucky family. My dad, David, was a great dad. I loved him. I remember him always tickling us, playing Barbies with us.
Then my parents got divorced when I was 11 years old, and my dad got full custody of me.
Me and my siblings were staying at my dad's house full-time.
One night, a year later, he snuck into my room, and he went under my covers. He told me he was sorry. He told me that if I told anybody, your daddy would go to jail. A year later, he started to have sex with me. I did cry when it happened, but I didn't say anything. I was scared. I was really scared. I went into the bathroom because I was bleeding, and I came out, and he told me that I had lost my virginity. I was raped by my father and basically held prisoner in my own home for 12 years. He did make me a sex slave and a wife. My dad did tell me that he was addicted to sex with me, that he didn't want anybody else. I felt like in his mind it was a relationship, and I hate using this word, but he felt it was more like of a marriage. He manipulated me into everything from sex to the wifely duties. He would make sure that I had his clothes clean and folded and the house cleaned and dinner ready. By the age of 16, I wasn't allowed to call him dad or daddy anymore. He wanted me to call him babe or honey. I do believe he was sick and twisted, and I do believe he was in love with me.
Sadly, that was just the beginning, because Kelly gave birth to 2 of her father's children, and says he forced her to keep their secret by threatening, manipulating, and brainwashing her into believing that this was just the way it was. This was a normal life.
My dad brainwashed me, manipulated me, and he threatened me so I would stay quiet. We have 2 matching tattoos. I do think that was a way to control me. He told me that when he dies, that I'll always have a piece of him on me. He did isolate me from family and friends. As soon as somebody started getting close, he'd shut off our relationship. He wanted to know where I was at all times, so he got me a cell phone to keep track of where I was. My dad would always go through my phone and listen in on my phone calls. All throughout high school, I never really got to be alone. He would show up to make sure I was in class. As I got older, the threats got harsher and harsher. The first threat was that he would go to jail and he would be raped. And then he started telling me that he was going to kill himself in front of me. One time, he had told me that he was going to kill me by putting my head next to his head with a gun, so it would go straight through both of us. I even tried running away. Every time he found me, he would tell me things were gonna be okay. He wouldn't do anything anymore. And the minute I got to the house, things went back to the way they were.
Well, Kelly, I'm glad to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
I'm sorry for the subject matter. At this point in your life, how do you feel about you and what's happened in your life? What do you say to yourself at this point about all of this?
It's hard to get through day-to-day life. I try to get through without remembering it. I have flashbacks of things that had happened. I feel violated because I feel like half my life was gone and taken from me.
You had no normal to compare this to, right?
No.
This is all you had.
This is all I had. I had no normal. This is what my normal was. This is how I was raised from the age of 11 all the way to it was what I knew was normal, what he told me.
See, those of us that didn't grow up with that can look at this and say, wow, that is so far out there, it's unthinkable. But if that's all you lived, if you never lived in another house, if you never lived in another relationship, then you have nothing to compare it to. But now you look back, and do you blame yourself for some of this? Do you feel like I went along with this at times? I should have said something. Do you blame yourself?
Sometimes I feel like I should have spoke up, but with the threats that he held against me, there's no way. It would have scared any child. It would have scared them to where they would never tell anybody. And it was scary. I was brainwashed. I mean, that's what I was raised as.
But from like 11 to 23, you lived like a married couple.
Yeah.
How did this happen? How did people in your world, people in your life, your mother, how did somebody not step up and say, this just looks wrong. This relationship doesn't look right?
Actually, a lot of people had suspicions and nobody spoke up. I felt let down from those people, kind of.
So there were people that knew something wasn't right.
Lots.
And the something that wasn't right was that you were being violated by your father in some way.
Right.
They may not have known the extent of it, but they knew something was going on that should not be going on.
Yeah.
And nobody said anything.
Nobody said anything.
Does that enrage you?
It kind of upsets me because it makes me feel as like the victim that did I not put enough signs out there? Did I not put the effort into showing people without specifically telling them this is going on with me?
How about your mother?
My mother
How does a mother not see that? Did she see it?
She didn't. I mean, I think she saw a little bit of signs here and there, but no, not that I know of. She didn't see very many, I guess.
But what do you say to yourself about people saw things but did nothing? What do you say? Do you say, was I not worth it? Did they not care? What do you say?
It's more of like, like the question why? Why didn't you say something? Why didn't you tell authorities? Or it's more I feel like it's more my fault. Like I didn't put enough signs out there.
Wow, we need to talk about this. We're going to take a break. Kelly says her father's demand for sex had no boundaries. She said he would force her to have sex while her younger sibling was in the room, forbid her from using birth control, and got her pregnant at 17. And that was just the first time. We'll talk about that and more after the break.
I gave birth to 2 children. My dad told people that I would sleep around. It made me feel horrible because that's not who I am. My kids called my father Papa, but he whispered into my daughter's ear to call him Dad.
And later, you're her mother. Answer the question.
I'm done.
No, you're not done. Your daughter is here, and she deserves for you to sit here and talk to her.
I had my own bedroom, but he did not want me sleeping in there. He would tell me to come sleep in his room. I moved into his room. When I was about 13 years old, he told me whoever was gonna ask that I had bad dreams and I would come in there to sleep. In his mind, he felt it was normal that I shared a bed with him.
Kelly, how does it feel to recount that now?
It hurts because it's shocking that I went through that and that I survived that. It's hard seeing his pictures.
What Kelly's talking about, if you're just tuning in, is that she was forced into a sexual relationship with her father from age 11 to 23, leading to a string of pregnancies.
I was pregnant a total of 4 times. I gave birth to 2 children who were fathered by my dad. He was always telling me that I was meant to be a mother. I always got asked who the dad was, and my dad always told me to tell people it was a friend of mine from a different high school, that I was sneaking out of the house, and that's how I had gotten pregnant. My dad was in the delivery room with me when I gave birth to my daughter and cut the umbilical cord, but didn't sign the birth certificate. My daughter was born with a club foot, and she was born not breathing, and my dad didn't even care. He could only ask what's wrong with her foot. He thought it was a birth defect because she was born out of incest. My dad told people that I would sleep around. It made me feel horrible because that's not who I am. My mom was shocked to hear that I was pregnant, and she eventually stopped asking who the father was. My kids called my father Papa, but he whispered into my daughter's ear to call him Dad. She would copy him, but she never really knew that that was her dad. She knew him as Grandpa.
And how old are your children now?
My daughter is 4, and my son is 2.
And so they have no understanding about any of this at all at this point?
No, none.
Will you tell them about this? Do you plan to tell them?
I don't plan to tell them who their father is or about their father unless it's medically necessary.
He knew this was wrong.
He knew it was wrong.
Because he lied about it, and he was willing to throw you under the bus publicly, socially, to tell people that you were promiscuous to cover himself.
You know, it hurt really bad because I was never promiscuous. I never got around. I never had a relationship. It hurt so bad that was what people viewed me as instead of what was really going on.
Did he fear you outing him?
Yes, he did not want to be brought out. He did not want me to say anything to anybody.
But he lived in fear of that.
All the time, from day one.
Have you heard the term emotional extortion?
No.
This is a powerful thing that abusers use. They use your emotion to extort your silence. They say, if you do this, you will be responsible for my death. You will be responsible for my going to prison.
And he said it all the time.
And he also convinced you that this was all consensual, right?
Yeah.
So you're going along with this. You have nothing to complain about.
Yeah. I didn't want to do any of it. And I would tell him, I don't want to do this. Please stop.
You tried to run away 3 times.
I did. I tried to run away, and each and every time, he found me. I ran to my neighbor's house one time, and he found me by Facebook location. I tried to run away and go stay in a hotel. He found me because it was the only hotel that rented to people under 21.
And you understand now, you did not have a sexual relationship with your father. You had a rape relationship with your father. We call it sex because it is a sexual act. This was not a sexual relationship. You were raped. That was a crime committed against you, and that you were the victim of that.
And that makes me feel a lot better because I've gotten the questions, you were 18, why didn't you leave? And people started saying, well, maybe she consented.
Well, some people are, it's the clinical term I'm looking for, idiots. Right?
Yeah.
Next, Kelly's mother, Christine, says right from the start, she had a gut feeling that Kelly was being abused. She said when Kelly's children were born, she immediately noticed the similarities between Kelly's children and her own. She says she didn't accuse anyone because that's a serious allegation. We're going to meet her next.
David was disgusting and sick in the head. At this point, the only thing I want to accomplish is to have my daughter move on. I know it was traumatic. It'll take some time to get over, but you just have to move on.
And later, answer the question.
I'm not going to do this.
Answer the question.
I'm not going to answer the question.
Don't you throw your hands up and walk out on her again.
My dad got a call from CPS and said that I wasn't allowed back at my mother's house. I didn't see my mother for 5 years and our communication was limited. She admitted to me that she gave up fighting for her right to be a parent. My mom was my best friend. Once I got taken away from her, my whole world crashed. I'm upset and angry with her because she should have fought to the end of the world to get custody back. When I tried to confront her, she came back at me and said, "You could have spoken up."
For over a decade, Kelly says she was forced into a husband and wife-like relationship with her father, David. She says he told her he was addicted to sex with her and couldn't live without her. So did Kelly's mom know about the abuse? And if so, why didn't this mother stop it? Well, she says she never had any proof, and Kelly never spoke up.
I was still trying to keep in touch with the kids, but it was hard. If I was even a minute late, David wouldn't let me talk to the kids. Communication pretty much stopped after the first year. I wasn't able to see them either. After a few times trying to go through court, I finally just threw my hands up in the air and said, I'll see them when they're 18. I always had my suspicions from the beginning. I would see pictures of David and Kelly on Facebook, and it would just seem odd. I was seeing his arm around her, like a couple. David and the kids visited me while they were on vacation, and Kelly was pregnant at the time. I kept asking her who the father was, and she would not give me a name. After my granddaughter was born, she looked like one of my kids. I asked Kelly point blank, "Is he touching you?" She said, "No, he's not." So then I asked her if he was doing anything to her sister, and she told me that no, I made sure of that. And that comment struck me as odd. After that conversation, I did call CPS. I told them I had a gut feeling that something was going on, but they told me that they couldn't do anything because I didn't have any evidence. Finally, Kelly called me up one day, and she told me that her dad had been molesting her since she was 11. And she told me that her kids are his. David was disgusting and sick in the head. I wish I had never met him. I want to have the perfect mother and daughter relationship. At this point, the only thing I want to accomplish is to have my daughter move on. I know it was traumatic. It'll take some time to get over, but you just have to move on. Life goes on.
Okay. How do you feel right now, seeing your mom?
I love my mom. She's my mother. I mean, there's some harsh feelings from way back then, but I mean, I still love her. She's my mom.
How do you feel about your role in all of this to date?
It's been hard, especially hearing everything that's been going on. To hear the news that my fears from a long time ago are true.
You're her mother, and I'm really curious about some of the things that you said. Mm-hmm. You said that the children were with him. How did that happen?
Part of that went through our divorce. They were going to go see this doctor, or it might have even been a mediator. Part of that was he had them lie to the mediator, which I found out, which I kind of thought happened because it was very odd that they didn't let them even come with me.
Did you fight for them?
I did.
Because it's awfully unusual that would happen.
Exactly. And I thought I had it in the bag, until everything just started going spiral down.
But then I heard you say on your tape, you said you try to see him and he would make it difficult. And then you said in about a year, you just said, you know what? Well, here's what you said. I pulled this by. Let's take a look at this.
I finally just threw my hands up in the air and said, I'll see them when they're 18.
I got to tell you, I'm stunned at that.
Kept fighting until I couldn't fight no more.
No, you didn't. You said, I just threw my hands up and said,
I'm done.
Screw it. I'll see you when I'm 18. No, you're not done. Your daughter is here, and she deserves for you to sit here and talk to her. Closed captioning provided by...
I finally just threw my hands up in the air and said, I'll see them when they're 18.
I got to tell you, I'm stunned at that. That was when they were how old?
They were young. It was a fight in court. I kept fighting until I couldn't fight no more.
No, you didn't. You said, I just threw my hands up and said,
I'm done.
Screw it. I'll see you when I'm 18. No, you're not done. Your daughter is here, and she deserves for you to sit here and talk to her.
I'm not going to be a bad person here.
You threw your hands up and said, I'll see you when you're 18 then. Don't you throw your hands up and walk out on her again. Answer the question.
I'm not going to do this.
Answer the question.
I'm not going to answer the question.
She deserves an answer. This isn't about you, it's about her. Let this be about her. Put her first today. What went through your mind when you said, I'll see them when they're 18?
What went through my mind was this fight was very hard. He was doing everything that he could possible to just make my life a living hell.
And by the way, something you will hear now, because you didn't prance off the stage here, is I realize this guy was a manipulative ass.
Yeah, he was.
I totally get that. To you, to her, but I realize what you're up against here. Don't think I don't. What I'm asking you is what you saw at the time. Everybody I have on this stage is a teaching tool. If there's a mother-daughter situation out there that parallels this in any way, use your life now to save a version of her in Oregon, in Florida, in Texas, in Arizona, in New Mexico. Your daughter comes here today with forgiveness in her heart saying, I want to heal this family. You wish you had done this differently.
Yeah.
If you knew then what you know now, you would have run him down the street if you had to. I know that. And by the way, if you're in that situation, don't run him down with a car. I'm not advocating that. Use the system. Go to the police. Go to the court. Don't resort to violence. That's not what I'm advocating. I'm just saying that's what you would have felt at the time.
I know.
But you say you did suspect it. What made you suspect it?
I just had a feeling, that mother instinct, that gut feeling from the beginning.
Did she fail to do anything she should have done?
I wish she would have come forward. I wish she would have said something from the beginning.
But you understand,
I understand
that a
why.
child that is in the grips of an abuser, that is a victim of emotional extortion and leverage and threat, is paralyzed in that situation.
I understand.
He is threatening her with her life, his life, your life. He's threatening her with everybody. How does a child fight against that?
They don't.
You couldn't fight against it. How
Nope.
could she?
No. I just wish she was able to. I understand why she didn't. That's her dad, too.
You said that she told you that nothing was happening. So at that point, you took her at her word.
I did. I'm still searching for clues on what I felt. You know, I started seeing pictures in Facebook that everything just looked different. It just looked weird.
Well, it was weird because while other kids were outside playing and enjoying their childhood, Kelly says she was like a prisoner in her own home. Those pictures were creepy. She says she was 11 years old when she became her father's sex slave wife until she finally confessed to her best friend what was really behind closed doors. We're going to meet Nicole next.
She told me that if I called the cops on her, she would never be my friend again. I figured it was better to lose a friend and save lives. Don't regret it.
Closed captioning provided by Imagine at 11 years old being brainwashed and groomed to be your father's wife. And that was Kelly's life for 12 excruciating years. That is until Kelly confessed to her best friend, Nicole.
The first thing that was weird to me about Kelly and her dad was that they were always texting each other. And they could be in the same room together and they were still texting. I never saw any of the messages because she was always sneaky about it. They acted like a married couple, almost to the point where people would question it. One time at a church party, they sat next to each other super close. Kelly's dad had his arm around her. If we ever wanted to go out like shopping or just take the kids out, he always had to come with us. Kelly's kids would slip up and call him daddy. I asked her if she was sleeping with her dad. She told me that there was no way that was happening. They just had a super close relationship. The next day, Kelly called me crying and told me that she had been sleeping with her father and that both children were his. I tried to get her to come over to my house or call the police, but she refused. She told me that if I called the cops on her, she would never be my friend again. I promised Kelly that I wouldn't call the cops, but as soon as we hung up the phone, I called the cops. I was more worried about her children than Kelly being selfish. I figured it was better to lose a friend and save lives. Don't regret it. As soon as the cops showed up at Kelly's door, Kelly pretended she didn't know what they were talking about, that she was happy and that she was there because she wanted to be there. I was so angry at Kelly because she lied to the cops and that was her one chance to get out. The next time I heard from Kelly was when she called me to tell me that her dad had committed suicide. Kelly has admitted to me that she has feelings for him more than a daughter and father relationship. She told me that she loved him, but she also hated him.
Kelly says David's paranoia about being found out hit an all-time high. 8 months after police arrived at their doorstep, Kelly says David called her and said he loved her and that this was not her fault. She says those words play over and over again in her mind.
My dad became paranoid and felt like my mom was starting a police case against him. He took his .40 caliber gun and drove off. He called me and told me he loved me, that this wasn't my fault, and that he loves my kids, and he hopes I can find somebody to raise them better than he did. Those were the last words that I heard from my father. I went to go try to find him. I saw a white van in the bushes. I went to the driver's side, and there I saw his gun in his hand and a bullet wound through his head.
Tell me what you're thinking and feeling right now.
That was the last image I have of my dad. And as much as satisfaction it gave me to see him dead and me free, that was just, my father. I like to remember the memories before things started happening, but that's a harsh image. It's a harsh image to get out of your head.
Mikhail, thank you for being here. Are you glad that she did what she did?
I thank her all the time. She saved my life.
What did you say to yourself when you said, I've got to do something here?
Like when she told me not to tell, I knew that I was lying to her from the beginning, saying that I promised I wasn't, because I was going to do it immediately. I already knew I was. There wasn't even a doubt that I wasn't going to call the cops, for her children's sake and her sake.
Is it fair to say that even with all this history, there are some mixed emotions?
There are some mixed emotions, yeah, because I wish I could go back to before he started doing things to me and have him as a dad. He was a great dad.
Are you confused that you have mixed emotions?
Yeah, I am, because, I don't know if it's normal.
You have confusion about why you would have mixed emotions about somebody that did this to you.
Yeah.
This is a big one. I'm going to make that really clear right after the break.
To this day, I have conflicting feelings about my dad. I love and miss my father, but I hate what he did to me. It scared me when my dad was gone because I had nothing. I was thrown out into the world with no life experiences. I'm a single mom trying to raise my 2 kids, and every day is hard. I have to learn how to be on my own.
Kelly was only 11 years old when her mother Christine lost custody, and she was forced to live with her father, where her nightmare began. Her father David raped and manipulated her into a relationship until the day he ended his own life. You do have mixed emotions about it. You don't understand why. I want to tell you exactly why. I think you will understand when I see it. There are going to be 3 numbers that make this, I think, exceedingly clear. Clear it up for you? I wrote a book called Self Matters a number of years ago. And in that book, I talked about 10-7-5, the 10 defining moments that we have in our life, the 7 critical choices that we make that define who we are, and the 5 pivotal people that we encounter along the way. And if you're ever going to know who you are, you're ever going to know why you do the things you do and feel the things you feel, you're going to have to identify what your 10 defining moments are, what your 7 critical choices are, and who your 5 pivotal people are. And the 5 pivotal people in your life are going to be the people that have written on the slate of who you are. In the early years, he defined himself in a positive way to you, and then he became evil and rotten and took away from you your childhood, your innocence, and so much that you deserve to have and can never get back. And so you have mixed emotions because you have mixed experiences. You have mixed memories. If you compartmentalize those 12 years and look back to the 10 that came before, you go, wow, I remember playing in the yard. I remember playing in the park. I remember him telling me a story. I remember things that were good. And that man sat in that seat of that car with a bullet in his head. My daddy is dead, and so is my rapist. And so it's all like this until you go, no, wait a minute. He was both of those things. So you got to give yourself permission to say, there was a time, but then it all changed.
It did, it changed.
But you have to understand that all came from the inside out. There was nothing you did. Kelly says she was angry when her father died. She says she's left with picking up the pieces and has struggled since the day he took his own life. I'm going to tell her how to put those pieces back together right after the break. What I want to tell you is that you have absolutely zero accountability for what happened to you as a child. Okay? Understand. You have zero. Look me in the eye and hear what I say. If you hear not another word I've said to you today, you have zero accountability to what happened to you as a child. Look at me.
Thank you.
You have 100% accountability for what you do about it now. You cannot change what happened, and you're not responsible for that. But you do have to lead the charge on what you do now. And let me tell you, there are open wounds. I'm glad your mother's here. And you started to leave, and I told you to sit back down. This wasn't about you, it was about her. And I thank you for not leaving. Thank you for staying here. I'm glad you did. Because you two need each other. And there's something that I want you two to do. I'm going to extend an offer to the two of you. There's a program here in America that I think is just top-notch excellent that's called On-Site. And On-Site deals particularly with people that have been through trauma. And they do very intensive workshops and treatment that's specialized for people that have been through emotional trauma, that deal with mental health issues, and they are just terrific at hitting the reset button and giving you a fresh start at redefining where you are in your life and where you are in your relationship. And I would like to make the offer to send the two of you there together.
I would love that.
All right, can we do that? And we'll do that at your earliest possible convenience. We'll make that available to you, okay? All right. I would like to thank all of my guests today. A special thanks to On-Site and Miles Adcox for all that he does for us at On-Site. And if you or someone you know is being abused, please contact RAIN, Rape, Abuse, and Incest National Network. And you can do that by calling 1-800-656-HOPE. Or you can go to rain.org. And for more information about today's show, you can log on to drphil.com. Thanks for being here. We'll see you next time.